Hello, welcome. Hope everyone's having a good day so far. Confirm via Lee's face if you can hear me. He has such a stoic face, it's hard to tell. I'm going to give it a couple more minutes to let some people trickle in. We appreciate everyone who made the time to join. Really excited to dive deeper into our API and some thought leadership from Lee on different ways that you can leverage automation with Binalyze Air. So it'll be a good session for everyone. Awesome. I think 2 minutes in, we'll let people trickle in, but I'll go ahead and get started with the agenda. A couple of housekeeping items before we dive right in. You can use the chat option on the right-hand side to submit questions or any comments. Also, feel free to email CERT, C-E-R-T, at binalyze.com as well. That'll come directly to Lee, myself, and the rest of our CERT team. And we'll be sure to answer any questions at the end of the webinar or via email if you prefer to send questions that way. So via the chat or via email to CERT at Binalyze. Just to go over some introductions, I know I've met many of you before, but my name is Sarah Vickery. I'm our customer success director here at Binalyze. So I'm your go-to resource to help ensure that you have what you need to be successful with the product. And in collaboration with Lee, putting together our inaugural quarterly customer webinar. So be on the lookout for more of these in the future. Where we'll do some bite-sized best practice trainings and videos and such. That's a little bit about me. Lee, I'll let you introduce yourself before we get into the content.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. My name is Lee Sult. Of course, I'm the chief investigator here, and I run what we call our CERT team. That's intentionally a double entendre. Generally, it might mean something like a computer emergency response team or something like that. For us, it stands for customer experience, research, and training. So that encompasses the customer success team, our threat research team, and our training team, of course. Looking forward to working with you guys today, and hopefully you have some good questions for us.
Awesome. Thanks, Lee. Yeah, so today we're going to go over why we've really become an API-first organization and how you all can go about starting to leverage our API more, robustly. Lee's going to demo a workflow example just to start to get the wheels turning on how you all can leverage our API along with N8N. For those of you who aren't familiar with N8N, it's a no-code business automation platform that we've partnered with. So Lee's going to go over a little bit more detail what that is and how it can be leveraged in tandem with Air to really maximize your automation potential. And he'll give some words on how he's thought that can replace, very expensive SOAR with N8N and our API. So should be a pretty valuable session. Like I said, please don't hesitate to ask questions throughout the chat, and we'll be sure to get to them at the end of the session. So the first and foremost, why are we focusing on integrations and why are we becoming an API first platform? And the real answer is that our customers are asking us to. You all are looking for products that allow you to streamline your workflows and integrate more effectively with your global teams, integrate more effectively into your tool stacks. And there's a need for repeatability. As you all know, it's hard to find really experienced talent in digital forensics and incident response. And so having a tool that can lead to faster and more efficient threat hunting, give you defensible findings in that repeatable fashion. It's easier for junior analysts to step right in and start to use the product is really important. And integrations is a good way to enable that. And you all can use our APIs now to recreate workflows that your teams are used to and do that directly within the user interface and really supercharge kind of how you all are using Air and saving time along the way, which is extremely critical at every stage of the investigative journey. And in terms of how you can actually leverage our APIs, like I mentioned at the beginning, there's a couple of different fashions. For those of you who haven't seen our API documentation, it's at docs.binalyze.com. There's documentation in 31 different languages. We've just refreshed it in the last couple of months. So if it's been a while since you've been on that website, I highly encourage you to check it out. We put a lot of work into ensuring that we have documentation there that can make it easy for you and your teams to leverage, but we're also available to help support you in those integrations as well. And then in addition to our API documentation, like I mentioned, we've also entered into a partnership with N8N and created a node within N8N specific to Binalyze Air. So I know it's kind of a lot of customers I've spoken with are not familiar with N8N yet. So this will be a bit redundant for those of you that are, but I'm going to pass it over to Lee to give a brief overview of what N8N is and how our node can be leveraged to help with these automations.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. As Sarah stated, N8N, or Nodemation, as some folks call it, is a no-code, I call it a business orchestration platform. So instead of it being a SOAR, maybe I would call it a BOR. Of course, I think as a former CTO, I think about these things in a product-y, startup-y type of way. Regardless, N8N, I feel like very strongly is the new Excel. I use it in my day-to-day life. My wife is using it in our day-to-day life. And I was speaking with our tech team and our founder, Imre, our CEO, and it's just a no-brainer that we had to integrate with this platform. And it's given us a lot of ideas and a lot of good ways to demo some workflows and some automations. We're going to go over one of those today. We have a few others that we see automations via N8N and or the API that are quite high power. So looking forward to getting some further ideas and questions from you guys. And I'm gonna give a quick demo of one of the workflows that we have for our knowledge base. And let me pop this in real quick. Can you guys see my screen okay?
Thumbs up for me.
Awesome. So this is one of our workflows for our knowledge base. This is what the interface for N8N looks like. This might look a little bit complicated, but I'll walk through it very quickly. At the end of the day, we have a knowledge base that's hosted on GitHub. So every time there is a post there, or every time we update that GitHub repo, what we do is this automation triggers and it goes through and looks for broken links. So one of the things that happens is sometimes we will move a knowledge base page from one section to another. Sometimes we accidentally duplicate something in that process. And this workflow here, what it does is it reads the GitHub update. It figures out what that update might be. And in this case, we see that there was one modified file called test.exe. And long story short is for every added file, it makes sure that link exists where it should in the website. And then it sends a notification and says, hey, the links are all good, the links are bad, or something is missing altogether. So it searches for new files to make sure they've been added. It searches for removed files to make sure they've been removed. And any modified files, if there are any new links, it lets us know that those links need to be updated somewhere. And it goes from GitHub, does a bunch of stuff automatically or auto-magically, as I like to call it. And then it sends me a checklist of things to do in Slack. Transitions from tech stuff to business communication platform. And we'll share that again here in just a minute. Any questions before I pop over to our API documentation? And Sarah, I'm going to rely on you to see if... I'm
going to say no questions yet, but Barry is jealous of your hat, and I don't blame him. I am as well. I'm waiting for my Binalyze merch to come in too.
This was limited edition. I think I might have gotten one of the last ones. I'm seeing if I can find another one too. This one's starting to get a little bit fuzzy. I got to figure out how to clean it. Thanks for that. If any of you folks have been in the API documentation before, say maybe back in June or July, you would have seen 5 API or 6 API endpoints, something like that. Say between 5 and 10. Now it's everything. So if you can do it in the user interface, you can now do it via our API. And just to give you an idea, you have the ability to create a brand new acquisition profile. You can update them, or you can download them, you can create them, you can update them, etc. You can trigger collections. You can open a case, close a case. If you can do it in the user interface, you can do it via the API. Moreover, you'll see, oh, there's the one I'm looking for. You'll see a couple different views here. So you have a single column view if you want to see this, if you want to make it more printer friendly and you want to have a quick reference for some of the commonly used APIs. We also have that double column view that's going to have a code example that can be copied and pasted directly into your IDE. And you'll notice up here, I believe there's 31 different implementations. I don't know anybody that's using C# for us, but maybe there is some use case out there. Long story short is we have that example. Now we do intend to improve this with other examples related to specific workflows. We're not quite there with our documentation yet. So if you do have any questions or do spot any bugs or anything, again, shoot that to cert@binalyze.com. Again, that's CERT@binalyze.com. And with that, I want to get into a short little demo of maybe I guess, let's see, where are those demo slides at? Can you go through some of those for me real quick?
Sure can.
And I'll clean my browser up over here. There we go. Awesome. So report writing. If I see a Brian on the call, if that's one of the guys I used to work with a long time ago, he knows how much I love report writing. And the truth of the matter is that I actually like constructing the arguments, but you'll see that when you go through a forensic report of one type, I've just taken the table of contents for one of our report templates. And you can see that the template is 21 pages long. That is 21 pages of me copying and pasting things or writing brand new summaries for a new type of finding, this type of thing, etc. And it's very labor intensive. And many victims or insurance companies or attorneys, outside counsel that you work with will want regular updates or routine updates or things like this. So the thing that comes to mind is we're almost always doing the same analysis of the same types of things. And not all of us like the same amount of reporting as others. I like the report. I like the strong argument, but I'm kind of like what looks like my old German Shepherd here. I want to find the bad stuff and press a button, and the majority of the report is done, so all I have to do is make some final edits. And with that, I'm going to give you some context of how that might go. So we have a brand new customer or brand new victim. You take a few notes from them. So they're a fishing charter. They have 45 office employees, but interestingly, they don't have anyone that works in the field, and they don't own any boats. And you're also kind of curious why they have so many crypto mining servers, but that's beside the point. As you get in here, they've complained about some ransomware, and we'll see that the initial scope or the initial sample of systems that we have access to are going to be a domain controller and 3 other workstations, which are also quite oddly named for a phishing charter. But hey, they called us, we're here to help, so might as well. Maybe these guys will, this organization will pop up into a future demo, and we'll find out some more about them. So with that, I don't think there's another slide here. Oh yeah. Anytime we go into an investigation, of course, we got a brand new case. It's ransomware. We want to know a few things. So while that case is still in its incident phase or that firefighting phase, and we haven't transitioned into forensics or that arson investigation stage yet, first thing we want to answer is, does the adversary have access to the environment? The next one we want to know is if they do have access to which systems, how many systems are affected, where does the attacker have control? Basically, how many systems do I have to kick them out of, or users? Next is we started to transition away from some of that firefighting and a little bit into that investigative or arson investigation stage of how they gained initial access. Sometimes we get lucky and we can answer that quickly. The other end of the spectrum, sometimes we never know how they got in. But it's important to know as we make remediation efforts and so on. And lastly, one of the parts where there is a lot less urgency and a lot more importance on accuracy is, did the attacker take any data? And if so, specifically, which individual records are at risk? Very clearly a forensics workflow or a arson investigation workflow. And for us, where we are in this, and pardon the graphic here, where we are in this phase of the incident is we're right after that preliminary assessment. Many people call these stages many different things. This is kind of the middle ground that nobody agrees with and nobody disagrees with. So we're going to call this the preliminary analysis or the preliminary assessment of these initial 4 hosts. And based on this, we might take those IOCs and go do a larger threat hunt or compromise assessment or a larger investigation, ultimately hoping to achieve containment. With that, I will share my screen again. Awesome. So this is the Binalyze dashboard. Many of you guys have seen this already, especially, of course, if you're customers. And I want to dive into and an investigation hub. I want to dive into the findings real quick. Now, I'm just going to take a brief look through this just to give you guys an idea of what this case looks like. I'll give these findings just a second to load. Normally, the first thing that I'll do when I come into a new case is I'll sort by severity, or in this case, what we call finding type. And I want to look at those bad findings first. I do see a lot of failed logins from a public IP, so that gives me some idea that there might be a brute force attack involved in this case. Again, I'm just going to quickly go through this. One thing that I'll see is I see this hack tool defender. I see some other things. I'm going to go ahead and mark some of these. So I see this C Windows temp tools teamreviewer.exe. Looks like it got triggered off of a sliver detection. So I'm starting to get some pretty good ideas. If I scroll down, I'll see some RDP access. This RDP access finding has been created by another analyst. That's something that I'm able to see, and I can ultimately export that. We'll show the export of these findings in just a second. I'm also seeing a lot of Windows Defender threat detection. If I were to scroll down on this one, we're going to see that that's going to be WannaCry, the WannaCry ransomware. A lot of other interesting stuff that we can see right off the bat. Let me scroll back down. We can see that this external remote SMB login from this IP address. If I take that IP address and look it up in VirusTotal real quick, we have some faster workflows for this, but I'll do it the old-fashioned way. If I show this, we can see that it is it ties back to a technology educational institute in Iran. Not that I've ever witnessed that IP block before, but that doesn't look okay. It looks like there's probably something really bad here, and this is exactly what we're taking a look at. So now it's clear we've been through here. We've got a couple of findings. We have some added flags, and we want to pull as many of these things out just to give a preliminary assessment to our victim or to the folks assembled for this incident response. And this is where I'll pop into a little bit of a more complicated workflow in N8N. So in here, again, we have the workspace and we have several nodes. I'm not going to walk through every single node, but I will give you an idea of how this works. So first, the first thing that we see is we're only in Binalyze for a couple of nodes. Effectively, what we're doing here is we're getting a list of the open cases, and we're getting a list of cases. I did forget one step. We're getting a list of cases that have a specific tag. So in this case, I want to have this report ready tag right here. Enabled, and that's what N8N is going to trigger on. And I'm going to have a little bit of a further context shift for you guys in just a second, as we transition from Binalyze into a Google Workspace reporting workflow. So you'll see, I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you guys can see this a little bit better. In the beginning, I'm getting a list of all of my cases. I'm going to filter for some open cases in here. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail, but I will show you. So I'm filtering for open cases. This filter is where I filter for that specific tag that's report ready. And then we start getting into some more advanced logic. We're setting specific things out of the specific attributes out of Binalyze and making full use of both the N8N node. And by the way, you can see that N8N node here. It's an official node, fully supported. It's not a limited community node. It is officially supported. We have 56 actions that we can conduct in here. Everything from updating or interacting with acquisition profiles. Pardon me. All the way to opening and closing cases. Now our innate end node is not 100% parity with our API, and I've included some examples of that into here. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and delete that. As we get through, we've got a list of the cases. We see that there's only one case at the moment that has that is report ready. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to start interacting in Drive. And I forgot to open the screen, so let me go ahead and pop this open in another window real quick so I don't accidentally expose a customer name. Let's see. Give me just 1 second. So as I pull this in, you'll see that we have this cert report writer folder. And this is where all of our magic is going to happen from N8N. Effectively, what it's going to do is create a new folder specific to this case that I'm working. So a new folder specific to this case. And that's where this trigger happens. We're going to create that new folder. We're going to copy the executive presentation, and we're going to copy the case tracking spreadsheet. After that, we're going to do some copy and replace commands on the presentation. And then we're going to go through, we're going to do some manual analysis, or we're going to do some analysis, and it's going to automatically do what would normally be manual analysis for us, fill out that spreadsheet, and do some further copy and replace actions on this executive report template. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and press the go button and let you guys see what this looks like in real time. Now, keep in mind, we were in the platform for about 5 minutes. Now that doesn't show the half an hour it took to collect that evidence, but in 5 minutes I have a pretty good idea of what happened. We see there's some sliver detections, there's some WannaCry detections. I saw some defense evasion techniques in there. If I would have spent maybe a little bit longer on that, I would have seen several other things. I would have confirmed that it was an RDP brute force with a successful login and so on. And what we're seeing here is I see all those things. I could just manually export that to a CSV and manually go through that with Excel. But each one of these steps is replacing something like a copy and paste, or the opportunity for human error to mistype something or misspell something. It's going through, and this is a deterministic workflow for doing the analysis. So I know exactly how many total assets there are. I know exactly how many assets have the affected flag. I could go through here. It's giving me an idea of how many findings for initial access or persistence there might be. These are tied back. I'll zoom in here so you can see these. These are all tied back to the MITRE ATT&CK framework. Now, a second ago, this case here, it didn't exist. So you can see that just about 1 to 2 minutes ago, this new folder was created. And if I were to pop into this folder and open an example of a case tracking sheet, you'll see that we have a few things. One, we have a summary. It starts with a timeline. It's a little bit difficult to read. This is just it's just an exported CSV, but we have all of the relevant times in here. We have the relevant finding path, or path for the particular finding that we have. In this case, most of these are going to be files. Some of these manually created detections don't have all the fields. That's okay. The point is we're getting the gist of the important stuff in this summary so that you can share this with whomever. One other thing that didn't make it into the demo is in our prototype, we have a recommendations tab. And this is something that can be delivered to the victim's IT team and say, hey, here are the recommendations, go make these changes. And by the way, here are the 4 affected assets. So these assets probably need to be wiped and reinstalled once we have forensic preservation. The next thing is, executives don't want a list of things to fix. They want kind of a list of observations. So if we go in here, and I'll show you what the template looks like in a second. Actually, I'll go ahead and do that now. Here's what that template looks like. So you'll see this is a very simple example, and there's it's only got a couple of things. The title page here, we have a status report. All we're doing is a simple find and replace. I can actually control, if I want to, the position of this arrow. If I want to automate moving of that, depending on the phase of the investigation, the phase of the incident. And lastly, there's an array that can get populated for these things. Now, this is just a very simple example. I didn't want to go into something full depth where I was going to do a whole briefing on the incident. This is just an example to show, hey, it's easy for us to integrate with Microsoft 365. It's easy for us to integrate with Google Workspace. We have a service where we can help you do this and automate your workflow, and we can use your own existing workflow and your own existing report templates to do this type of thing. And this is what it looks like after the fact. Very simple. We see that the incident has been ongoing for 1 day. There's a total of 4 assets in scope. All 4 of them are affected. We can generate a graphic down here for that. I just didn't do it for the purposes of this demo. And it's also extracted some things that have been flagged or marked up in the platform itself. So I can see, although the formatting is not great, that we have 8 external SMB logins from a public IP, and we have 453 failed logins. So that looks like a good candidate or a good lead to follow up on. Again, this is just kind of a preliminary assessment in this case, and I'm just demonstrating the fact that we can interact with the various APIs from various tools, our various reporting workflows. So once again, you can see there's lots of interaction here. We have, in the beginning, we have Binalyze that is able to integrate directly with N8N's logic. It's then interacting with Google Drive, Google Sheets, and Google Slides. So quite powerful. We can do very similar workflows with Microsoft 365, and this is just one example of how we can save a ton of time and help our fellow investigators and analysts. Go ahead and save that. Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you, Lee. I'll open it up for any questions. I don't see any in the chat, but I'll give it a couple minutes just in case anyone has any questions or would like to maybe hear Lee's perspective on other ways that we can integrate. Of course, reporting is just one of the many different things that we're looking to automate and that customers are asking us to help automate. So yeah, I'll open up the floor for any questions.
There are a couple of other workflows that have been discussed, and I wanted to make sure I didn't take up too much time in the demo today. So another workflow that was common and for some of our customers was the ability to integrate with a GitHub workflow for detections. So let's say that you have a workflow set up where you have like a cyber threat intelligence feed. Those feeds come into your GitHub space, you curate those, and then they automatically get added as triage rules. Beyond that, if you have a new triage rule land, we can also trigger a brand new threat hunt as soon as a rule lands, and then trigger a notification once that triage or that threat hunt is done. Another workflow that came to light, also is not applicable to everybody, is one of our customers is going through, basically using this to go through audit logs and figure out which acquisitions were conducted by which analysts in the period prior. I think they do it every week or every month. And the idea there is, are there any critical access assets where someone is collecting evidence and they shouldn't be? High transaction systems, is somebody taking a disk image of the CEO's laptop, that type of thing. So it's very much a who's watching the watcher's workflow.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Lee. We do have one, I guess, question or ask. Could you talk a little bit about automated evidence collection via API, and specifically how a customer might call on a specific pre-built profile to collect evidence on a specific device as part of an IR workflow?
Absolutely. There's a couple examples here, and we tried to squeeze in an EDR to Binalyze workflow. But if we want to work with one of the larger EDRs, there's some legalese to jump through, and many product companies do not like code demos with other product companies. So we went with a reporting demo today. So I appreciate your patience on that. In this case, we have the ability. So best practice for us is if you have a brand new tenant and you have all of the available existing workflow evidence acquisition profiles, generally use the full profile, the quick profile, or the compromise assessment profile. From there, I found that it's better to do some investigative strategy or methodology on your own and copy one of those 3 and then create your new profile. Each one of those profiles will have an associated ID, and either via the API or through N8N, you can say, hey, I've detected this type of alert. It's a malware alert, and I have a on a domain controller. You could then use that alert from your EDR, whichever one it might be, trigger that via the API or N8N, and then select that ID for that acquisition profile. And there'll be a few things. So you're gonna want to probably create a new case. You're gonna want to select your acquisition profile, you're going to want to select the assets that are associated with your target, and then hit the go button from there, or let the automation take over from there. Raw data will land in your evidence repository if it's configured in policy, and then the interpreted data will just end up inside the case in the investigation hub. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, I think it did. I think a follow-up question or clarification question, you know, and I think I can even answer this, that confirming that capability is done via the API, specifically. And in their specific example, when they have opted to create custom focused profiles for different cases, leveraging that custom profile ID to build out automation is possible via the API.
Absolutely, you can create brand new. In fact, we're experimenting with something that will have user interface implications. I'm thinking about creating collection profiles for every detection. So here's one of the workflows that we're researching. So we'll say that I'm using my EDR, my favorite EDR, and I get an alert that some malware is running in memory, and I get a particular path. I want to create a collection profile specifically for that, or I want to add that particular path as a custom content profile for a full collection or something along those lines, to make sure I get access to that binary as well. And where that shows up is, it's easy to do that. It is trivial to make that happen. But then it shows up in your list of evidence acquisition profiles. And it can become a little bit burdensome, as you know, if that were something where you have a new profile created every 10 minutes because you have an alert volume that's that high. So yes, we do have the ability to create custom profiles right off the bat from things that are globally usable by any organization, custom content profiles specific to one organization, so it's not visible everywhere else. We can slice and dice that in a lot of ways, and we will be making that best practice, I believe, or at least that's my hypothesis.
Yeah, and I believe that documentation is under the acquisitions tab within the docs.binalyze documentation. But if you're having trouble finding the documentation on how to set that up, I'm going to drop our email into the chat as well. And please, yeah, drop me a note and we can set up a call to help make sure we can send it via email back to you to make sure that you have the right documentation to flesh out that automation.
For sure. And on that documentation piece, so our fleshed out API documentation is brand new, and we know as an organization we can get better with all of our documentation. So if there's any deficiencies or anything that's missing, please let us know directly, and we'll make that change as quickly as we can. And Sarah and our CERT team owns the knowledge base. So same thing, we're in the process of refactoring the knowledge base as a whole and reorganizing that. So you'll see that there's some duplicate entries on there, or there are some things that can be elaborated on further. Anything that you notice, let us know. We'll prioritize those things, and we do have a plan to improve both the API documentation and our knowledge base over time, and we're making those improvements nearly every day.
Yeah, awesome. And another comment from Barry as well, which is a good note, just in reviewing the documentation, that it looks like it'd be quite simple to automate running an OS query on a registry key to obtain a file path and then run a custom collection to collect config files from that path. He gave an example, a query where Apache is installed and then retrieve logs from that location, just as an example. So that's another great way to leverage the API to automate some of those more mundane tasks that you have to complete every day as part of a case.
Yeah, that's the idea. And I think what you're going to see is with these automations, the folks that have great ideas like this, let's have some conversations. Let's have some group conversations and figure out how we can advance us all. So the API obviously gives us the ability to extend beyond the capabilities of the platform and enable some of these custom workflows. Some of those things, like drilling in and doing that recursive collection of config files referenced by a registry key, we might end up building that into the platform. So as we have some of these more popular workflows, some of them will just get built in because we should be doing that. Other ones are going to be more bespoke, and some of them are just going to make sense to do via the API and are things that we should never build into the platform itself. So very great advice there. In fact, I think I'm going to take a note on that one, and I might build some collection workflows out like that.
I have to be careful not to get Lee too excited, spending all his time in NA. I need his help in other places too.
That's true. Awesome.
Yeah, right. Larry with another great suggestion for you, Lee, to help to build the integration forum.
I will. shoot us an email after this. I'm happy to talk about that.
He's not kidding, by the way. Definitely shoot him an email. All right. I think that does it. I don't see any more questions. I'm starting to see people drop from the session. So I think that yeah, that's our sign to say thank you for your time today. And please let us know what other topics you'd like us to cover. We'll look to host our next webinar likely just after the new year. So please let us know your thoughts on what would be most useful, and we'll go by popular vote and build some content around some best practice workflow sessions that will help you all be more successful with Binalyze Air. And yeah, really appreciate your time today. Hope everyone has a good rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.